Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, and today I'm going to bring you the fans' view of the new season ahead. It's a pleasure to be joined by Jonny Greenwood from Newcastle Fans TV, Sam Mulner's partner in crime in the podcast world. I'll let him plug his podcast in a moment. First off, Jonny, welcome to our podcast. How are you keeping?
I'm very good, Andrew. Yeah, very, very good. It's on the eve of another Premier League season supporting Newcastle United. There's not going to be too much drama, is there? It's just, a nice straightforward season, probably, hopefully. Who knows?
I was going to say, hopefully. There's never any drama with Newcastle United, is there? Well, we've got plenty to talk about, even though there's been a lack of transfer activity. But we'll start with transfers because even though there hasn't been maybe the marquee signing we've all hoped for, there has been a few free transfers. They look like they're on the cusp of signing Mark Gee, although that third bid that has gone in looks like it has been rejected at the time of recording, which is Wednesday afternoon. You'll be hearing this on Thursday morning. What have you made of the transfer window so far?
I think it would have to be underwhelming at this point. I think if it was exactly the same 3 weeks ago, you'd say, yeah, steady enough. We've had to bring in players in positions that we needed a bit of covering, but we're in a situation where we're looking at the start of the season and our own real signing that could potentially play some minutes is probably our third choice striker when everybody's fit. I think that just kind of shows how underwhelming it is so far. I'm not saying Asula's not going to be a bad striker for Newcastle. I actually think he's got the capability of being a very, very good striker for Newcastle United. Probably not this first half of the season. I'm thinking more second half of this season and maybe the years to come. But we've got a third choice goalkeeper, a fourth choice goalkeeper at this currently as we speak, Andrew, and it's just getting to the situation now where we need a marquee name. And I know that Newcastle don't want to pay over the odds, and we've seen so many times over the last 3 years since the new ownership have come in that they don't really want to spend above what they think is a fair value. But it's getting to the stage now where I think a signing has to be made. And it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't decide to go for Mark Gahey, that maybe they go for someone like Jared Branthwaite and test Everton's resolve on him. But I think we've all kind of decided that Mark Gahey would be ideal in terms of the hierarchy, in terms of Eddie Howe and even the fan base. I think the fan base are very much sold on Mark Gahey, but it's been underwhelming.
It seems though that supporters and the majority of the fan base are keeping their emotions in check. I think everyone would agree with you that it has been underwhelming, but there so far isn't the kind of explosion of anger nor frustration. I'm not feeling that at the moment, but obviously as the window goes on, and if they haven't got that marquee signing, then that will of course come to the surface. How key is it, do you think, that they get someone in before the Southampton game and really give the whole stadium a bit of a boost before the first ball is kicked?
I think as we record Wednesday afternoon, I just can't see that happening with the time we've got, unless let's say a breakthrough has been made with Crystal Palace today, and then he's on his way up to Newcastle, say Wednesday night or Thursday morning. It would be very, very unlikely. I think the word I would use, it's an irritation right now that we haven't got a marquee name over the line in terms from the fan side of things. I think if you see it on social media, I think if you speak to people on the street, it's an irritation. It's not frustration. I think we would like to get something done, but the ownership have done well over the last 3 years. That there's trust there. They know what they're doing. 90% of the signings that they've brought in have done well for Newcastle. So there's that. We'll be a little bit more patient. We'll let you get it right. But I just can't see Gay signing before Saturday. I'd love him to be in the stands on the verge of signing. That would be, I think, realistic. Potentially, if a deal can be agreed before the weekend, I think you could certainly see Gay in the posh seats, if you like, for the Southampton game. But at this moment in time, unless I thought Steve Parish I thought it was a very, very good interview Steve Parish gave to a lot of the press yesterday at the launch of the Premier League meetings, and then basically just said, look, we've got something that you want, and if you want him, you're paying superstar money. We think he's a superstar, and the common consensus is he is a superstar. He did very well for England, done very well for Crystal Palace. You can't blame him whether you think 60, 65 million is over the top. That's what Crystal Palace believe he's worth. The same as Solanke was with Bournemouth. To Bournemouth, he was worth £65 million. So you've almost got to pay what these clubs want, or at least very, very close to that. And Newcastle, at this moment in time, haven't got to that mark yet.
We were having this discussion in the office about when Newcastle United walk away from the deal, if they don't want to pay what Palace are asking, that superstar price tag, and whether the damage of walking away now, as opposed to maybe paying an extra 5 million on top of that, you didn't necessarily want to pay at the start of negotiations, would it be more damaging to walk away in the message that sends to the fan base, who I do think, as you say as well, Jonny, are a little bit irritated at how things are going so far? I'm just thinking, say if we got the news on Thursday or Friday that the deal was off, that does not set you up very well for Saturday, does it?
No, it doesn't. I think it's difficult to say because you look at the game on Saturday in Southampton, and with the greatest of respect to Southampton, with or without Mark Gahey or a right winger coming to the football club, which I'm sure we'll mention later on, Newcastle should still beat Southampton comfortably on Saturday. Let's be really honest. You look at the team that is likely to start. That team is enough. Should have enough to beat Southampton. I think it's just trying to make that breakthrough, isn't it? If they do walk away from the Gay deal, I think it'll show two things. I think first thing they're saying, look, Newcastle have got a price they don't want to go over, and if they don't feel like it's worth it, then they'll move on to something else. Crystal Palace will have that decision whether or not they think doing that is the right decision. I think the second thing in terms of the message that it brings out is this is Paul Mitchell's first real assignment as sporting director. You know, he's the man that's meant to be getting these deals over the line. Now, we've seen him get deals over the line for other clubs and been very, very successful. However, if this deal doesn't happen, then let's say they go to somebody else, and it takes a little bit of a while because they've known that Newcastle have gone to 55 plus 5. Then what sort of message does that send? I think it's really, really important how Newcastle deal with this, and I'm sure they're dealing with it in so many different ways. And even Steve Parrish said they are doing it very, very professionally. They're not, it's been a very, very professional process. But at this moment in time, as we record, the deal's not. I wouldn't say it's not far from being done. It's not anywhere near from being done by the way Steve Parrish was talking yesterday.
And time not on Newcastle United's side either. Just 2 weeks of the window left. Of course, deals can happen in a quick moment. From a fan's point of view, Jonny, obviously that irritation, frustration is there. But is there also an understanding of the situation that Newcastle United are in? They had the issues with PSR at the end of June. They've come through that. They've had to sell 2 youngsters that they didn't really want to sell, but they're not necessarily out of the woods altogether. And that's obviously going to be playing in the back of the mind of Paul Mitchell and the owners as well. Newcastle United, in an ideal world, want to sign the best players. In an ideal world, they would be done by now and they would have the 2 or 3 real improvements in the squad. But that's not the way things work. It's not an ideal world. Is there an understanding that Newcastle United are trying, but they are a little bit stung, a little bit stuck by restrictions and what they can spend?
I think they're going to have to try a little bit harder. That's the greatest of respect, Andrew. They've got to try a little bit harder if they want these deals done. This is big boy business. This is Premier League business. We're talking a lot of money, and it's almost like they're playing poker with Crystal Palace a little bit and seeing who blinks first. And at the minute, Crystal Palace go, well, we just sold Elise for the same, very much a similar price. Eze, we know we could sell for the same, if not more. Adam Morton's probably going to be a player that they could get big money for next season. They're not in a position where they can kind of go, well, we really need to take this deal. They've got money. Crystal Palace have got money. They don't have to worry about it. From Newcastle side of things, it's the case of, spending the money wisely, which, look, we can talk about PSR all day and the benefits and the negatives. There's more negatives than benefits in Newcastle United right now, because if it was, a non-PSR world, Newcastle would be spending probably close to 5 times the amount they're spending now, and that's no exaggeration, because they could do that and it would still be not even a drop in the ocean. But as we speak right now, it's about how they use the money. It's almost like you've got a shopping list. Here's 100 million, right? How are you going to spend it? The thing is that the fans will get on board with it if we can see results. I think if Newcastle win on Saturday against Southampton, regardless of how they win, as long as they win, they'll be thinking, right, next week, can we get the player? Can we get that breakthrough? Can we get to the Bournemouth game with at least a new signing on the bench, or at least a new sign nearly done? And if that's the case, then you'll feel a lot more positive. But Newcastle just have to act a bit more. I think they'll be acting more clever in certain other deals, but this one's just a deal that I think you're just going to have to pay what they want to an extent, because I think 60 plus 5 would probably just be enough to get the deal over the line. But there's not really been any murmurs of that at this moment in time.
You are right. A defeat to Southampton probably then focuses the attention of the fan base on the transfers, and you might see a little bit more criticism and a little bit more agency when it comes to signing players. If the transfer window ends, Jonny, with centre back, let's say it is Mark Gee, signed, done, Newcastle United player, but no one else coming in, no right winger, how are you labelling the window?
Still underwhelming, because I think because we saw pretty much 95% of the whole squad, play in that Cellar Cup, and we played two, decent level of opposition on paper, Girona and Brest, and I thought Brest were a better outfit than Girona out of the two games. I think there's different reasons for that, but regardless, for me, when I was watching the game, did I feel that centre half is really a position that Newcastle really need to go all out and spend the vast majority of their summer transfer window budget? I didn't think that. I still thought right wing from watching the two games. I thought Murphy did well, scored a fantastic goal, but Miggy didn't really offer a great deal. For me, I would rather have us spend more money on a right winger if we can get a good right winger in and we know he's ready-made, Premier League proven. Mark Gay would certainly improve Newcastle, and I think them thinking more long-term, because Fabian Schär can't go on forever. And Sven Botman and Lloyd Kelly are very, very good from in terms of the options we've got. At this moment in time, because we're not playing in Europe, I don't know whether or not centre half is the most important, but are you going to turn down a player the quality of Mark Gay? Probably not. But going back to your question, if it's only Mark Gay, it improves the defence, but it puts more pressure on Alexander Isak to stay fit, puts more pressure on Anthony Gordon the season that he had last season, more pressure on Harvey Barnes to improve in the season that he didn't really have last year. He had probably a 25% season last year. Callum Wilson needs to stay fit. Asula needs to hit the ground running. Jacob Murphy and Almiron need to do well. That puts a lot of pressure. If you can get another right winger that is ready-made, who can give you so many goals, so many assists, then that takes the pressure off. But it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be really, really fascinating. And you look at the right wingers that Newcastle have been linked with. At this moment in time, none of them say to me, that's going to decrease the pressure on the rest of the squad. In my opinion, there's no one I've really gone, well, that's a really, really good target for Newcastle. There's nobody that's really excited me in that regard just yet.
Interesting. I mean, what were you expecting this summer from a realistic point of view in terms of incomings?
I did think that a right-hand side forward would definitely be coming in. I expected a striker coming in, but I didn't know what sort of striker in the respective if Callum Wilson stays or not. I think with Asula coming in, I think Wilson stays. And I think there's been so many arguments, would you rather Wilson stay or Wilson go? I was always in the camp of I wanted Wilson to stay. I still think Wilson, even if he gives you 20, 25 games, still gives you enough goals and still gives you enough of an output. And the fact we're only playing one game a week, maybe the odd FA Cup or League Cup game, there's enough to kind of go, we've got enough cover in that position. I like what they've decided to do. I like that they've decided to go with a young striker, up and coming, who has a lot of good attributes, young, very quick, can play across the front line a little bit towards the right-hand side and as the main man. He's young, he's 6'4", he's a real big bloke. The best way I could describe him, he's like Alexander Isak with muscle, but he needs to try and end up being like Alexander Isak. If you've got two Alexander Isaks in your squad, then I tell you what, you'd be very happy. But I thought Asula, just from the one game that I saw, very much Dom Solanke vibes, but Dom Solanke at Liverpool, not Dom Solanke at Bournemouth, in the sense that he's trying to find his feet a little bit and trying to link up with Champions League players and European quality players. That's what he's got to do. That's his project, I suppose, his targets for this season. But certainly another striker was on the list. A right winger was on the list. I would have said fullback if Trippier went, just in case, more as cover for Tino Livramento. But I'd be quite happy with Trippier staying. And again, I think if Dubravka was to go, he may be another, like I say, a second choice goalkeeper. But we've already got two because we're lucky and we're blessed in that position now. But that was kind of my shopping list as long as none of the big boys left.
And in terms of your prediction for the final few weeks of the window, do you think they will sign a centre back? Do you think they will manage to get a right winger over the line? And who do you think might leave as well?
I think in terms of players coming in first, I think they will get a centre half. The noises seem to say that the Gay deal will just about get done. 55 plus 5 is more or less being rejected without being confirmed of being rejected. I think 60 plus 5 is probably the minimum that Palace would go for and accept that. And I think it's whether or not Newcastle want to do that. I think it would be a coup if Newcastle can get that one over the line. If you're asking me right now, will it happen? I think it just about will happen. But don't be surprised if Newcastle going for Jared Branthwaite instead and say, Everton need the money. Here's £65 million because he's slightly younger to go, right, we'll put all our eggs in that particular basket. But if you're asking me right now, I'll say Gary signs for Newcastle. I think Newcastle do bring in a right winger. I do think that happens. Whether or not that happens because Almiron leaves, who knows? Let's be honest, we don't know what the situation is. I think Newcastle would do a deal, but I don't think Almiron really wants to leave Newcastle. I think he's quite settled, quite happy. He's got 2 years left on the contract. I think there was a year left to be slightly different because he's not an injury-prone player like a Callum Wilson. He will give you enough games. It's just the quality side of things. Is he going to give you enough in terms of the Premier League? I think the right-hand side winger, if Almiron goes, it's a permanent signing. If Almiron stays, it could be a loan with an obligation. And I think that would probably suit all parties if it's the right player. For Newcastle, it might be a case of just getting a deal done for competition more than anything. And I think that's pretty much about it, really. Unless something comes up there that's too good to turn down, and Newcastle feel like it's good value, then maybe they might spring a surprise. But you can't see more than 2-3 signings from now until the end of August.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting finish to the window. In terms of that right wing, you've mentioned that the people who've been linked to Newcastle United haven't really excited you, and I'm going to list off a few who I think you're talking to. So apologies to the people who begged me not to mention 2 names because I've spoken about them enough this summer, but Anthony Elanga and Brian Mbeumo, I'm guessing, are maybe 2 names that have not excited you.
I was thinking Noni Madueke was one that I was thinking of.
You see, he's the man that I really don't want to see at Newcastle United, but I actually think he's the man out of everyone that's been linked who is more likely to come to Newcastle United. I think they'll get him on a loan deal. They seem to have this good relationship with Chelsea. We saw with the Lewis Hall deal. I think good chance they get him on loan with an obligation to buy next summer. I don't think it's exciting. As Elanga or Mbeumo, I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, but I would rather those 2 ahead of the Chelsea winger.
Yeah, I think it's an unfair thing to say in terms of what I'm just about to say, but he just looks like he's got the wrong attitude for Newcastle United right now. I think an Mbeumo would probably be, out of the 3 players you've mentioned, he'll probably be top of my list. Out of the 3 players you've mentioned there, I think he's Premier League proven. I think he's ready for that step up. He's still quite young in Mbeumo as well. And I think he could do with that particular challenge of playing for a team that's fighting to try and get back into the Champions League. I think he is probably a better version of Almiron, is probably the best way I can put it. Elanga is very, very quick, but he's just left Man United just over a year ago, 18 months ago. I feel like, I'm not saying Forest is his level in the sense of just above a relegation zone, but I don't think he's quite at the level of fighting for top 4 and fighting for top 6. I think he's somewhere in the middle. He's probably where like a Brighton or a Palace are right now, 10th, 11th sort of player. I think Mbeumo maybe has a little bit more to offer, but Mbeumo has the stats to back it up. And I think he's probably ready for that next challenge. Madueke, for me, good player. I'm not disputing that. I just, you look at Chelsea, it's a bit of a mess at the minute. Does he really want to leave Chelsea because he was getting games? I don't know. Depends if Maresco really wants to keep him. But you wouldn't be surprised if that deal gets done. It's got the most noise, Madueke. Hopefully he surprises me if he does sign, because I just, you've got to really, what's the best way of putting it? You've got to really be addicted to what Newcastle United are doing right now, because it is a project, and at Chelsea it's not necessarily a project. It's basically, you're living in the best part of London, playing, with some very, very good players to try and finish in the top 4 for Newcastle. It's kind of like we need to get into the top 4 right now because we haven't got European football. So look, I think it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens with that right hand side. But I hope there's another surprise somewhere.
Yeah, I'm certain many people listening and watching do as well. Let's talk then about the football. What is the aim for Newcastle United this season? First off, we'll get your opinion on your viewpoint on that. What do you think Newcastle United can and should be aiming to achieve? And then we'll talk about maybe the aim and objectives within the boardroom itself. But from your point of view, Jonny, what are you hoping for?
Champions League qualification has to be the big project this season. That has to be the target. Whether that's fourth or fifth, as long as Newcastle United are in that draw for the Champions League next season, that has to be the aim this year because of the opportunity we have. At this moment in time, we're not losing a Gordon, Isak, Bruno, Botman, any of our big players. We've got a free go at it this year, a bit like the season before last where we got into the Champions League. Everybody else, bar West Ham, who I'm considering a bit of a target as well because of the business they've done in this window, are in European competition. We have to take advantage of the fact that we're not playing a game, every midweek. It practically, what's the best way of putting it? It was impossible to predict the amount of injuries, and it was so difficult to manage it in terms of what Eddie Howe. I think actually did very well to be considering the circumstances, but it has to be Champions League qualification, Andrew. It has to be.
Would you take Champions League qualification over winning a cup? I know there's been a poll doing the rounds over the last week or so, which has caused a bit of debate on social media. If that was, the two options, either qualify for the Champions League, no silverware, or you qualify, you win this piece of silverware and then you get, Europa League or Europa Conference, what would you rather?
If you asked me 5-6 years ago, my answer would have been a lot different, but my answer now is to win a trophy. Just because it's been so long, we need that monkey off our back, and it's getting to the stage now that I think if we can get that trophy, like I say, my little dream is to see Newcastle United win the FA Cup. I think that would be, an amazing, journey in terms of getting to Wembley when it's sunny in May, and actually seeing Newcastle United win and lift a trophy. I still have that little dream, but I think we need it. We need it. We're desperate for it, and we've got the team now that can get over the line. I think we've got to a final. We got to 2 quarterfinals last year. We were practically a penalty shootout away from a final. I would have thought we would have beaten Middlesbrough over 2 legs, and then we ended up getting the best team on the planet in the quarterfinal of the FA Cup away from home. So, the draws weren't kind to us last year. If Newcastle can get over the line this year with the team and the squad they've got, they'll be remembered for such a long time. The Champions League is an amazing competition. Can we win the Champions League? No. The Champions League right now, like in terms of a year from now, probably not. We can win an FA Cup. We can win a Carabao Cup if we get the right draw and we can play our maximum because we've got everything going for us.
But from the owner's point of view and those in the boardroom, do you think they share that? I mean, of course they want to win a cup, but if it was presented to them one or the other, I think they would take Champions League football just because of the revenue. It's more lucrative, and that's going to help them progress into a bigger and better team, into a team that will win these trophies, hopefully season in, season out. But another year without Champions League football, I think that leaves you open to losing your best players. And I just wonder what those inside the club are aiming for this season. Do you think it differs from what maybe the fans would accept?
I think you are right. I do think this ownership's a little bit different to previous ownerships we've experienced. Under John Hall and Mike Ashley, I think it's very different. It's very different. It is very much money orientated, but that is what football is right now. It is about money and how you can earn it, how you can increase it, and how you can maintain it. More importantly, Champions League qualification certainly does that. It brings you an extra 150,000 seats in the ground. Well, more than that now, an extra 200,000 because obviously there's going to be 8 group games. So there's for at least 4 home matches, potentially the season after next if Newcastle qualify. I understand all of that. I really, really do. But I don't work for inside the club. I'm the fan, and the fan inside me wants to see Newcastle United win a trophy. Of course, if you're asking Peter Silverstone, Darren Eales, I'm sure off the record they would say to you Champions League qualification more than anything. But Newcastle United need to win a trophy. They need to win that trophy. They need to win an FA Cup. They need to win a League Cup. They're not, like I say, we're not going to win the Premier League. We're still a little bit off that particular dream. But you win your first trophy, then Newcastle fans will be like, you know what? Yes, we love that, but now we'll take Champions League qualification over a trophy because it means that because we've got that memory, we've got that moment, we've won something, and fans can remember it. You know, like my dad wasn't even born. My dad's 60 at the end of this month, and he wasn't even born. I don't think when Newcastle won a trophy, or if he was, it was, I think he was maybe 2. So he can't even remember it, and that tells you something.
Yeah, it was a very, very long time ago. And of course,
Yeah.
as a fan, I would love to see them win that trophy and, like you say, get the monkey off the back. It's going to be such an interesting season. And we talk about, Champions League qualification, and it was a kind of a banned word that season when they did qualify for the Champions League until it was done and dusted. But this summer, we've seen players talk openly about qualifying for the Champions League. Joe Linton, Bruno, and even Eddie Howe saying, you know what? He doesn't mind players talking about it. And I don't know about you, Jonny, but I'm liking that. I'm liking hearing the manager addressing that and saying, yeah, you know what? I'm in that camp. That's the aim this season.
Yeah, I agree. I think Eddie Howe is under pressure this year to deliver that from probably the ownership. I think, he'll argue that I want more players into the club to deliver that. But I still think, even though with the squad that he's got and the fact that he's not in European competition, as we mentioned before, he'll still fancy his chances of doing that. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. There's some very, very good teams. It's a very, very competitive league. If in terms of getting into the top 4, it's going to be very, very difficult to get into that category. But Newcastle are good enough if they can put a run together. The fixtures, I think, have been very, very kind to Newcastle. They're quite spread out in terms of your Manchester Cities and Liverpools and Arsenals are pretty much spread out. You've not got them one after another. You've got them pretty much a month and maybe 6 weeks difference. So Newcastle, it's been quite kind in that respect. But the problem is Newcastle aren't going to necessarily be under the radar this season, because if they can get a few wins, they know what they're capable. Like the rest of the Premier League knows what Newcastle United are capable of. If St James's is bouncing, the team's winning, and Newcastle say start well and say, I don't know, win 5 of the first 8 or 6 of the first 9 or whatever, then they'll be there or thereabouts. And the other teams will think, well, how are we going to stay with it? Because we can't compete with playing 2 games a week or 3 games a week in some cases.
Yeah, you're right. There's a massive opportunity for Newcastle and Eddie Howe to take advantage of the fact that they're not in European football for the new season to come, and they've got to make sure they take advantage of that, of not having that busy schedule. And it's all about injuries, isn't it? It's about staying injury free, because we know last season absolutely decimated Newcastle United. They lost so many key players throughout the season, plus Tonali being banned. But if every one of those players in that squad manages to keep fit, they don't get suspended and what have you, it's a very, very good squad. It's, yes, it needs some incomings. We know that the centre back, the right wing, ideally, you'd probably want maybe another full back in, maybe another striker in. But I think the players that are there now, that is a top 6 squad. And it's just about staying injury free.
It certainly is. I think it is about staying injury free, but we need Bruno Guimaraes and Alexander Isak to play the vast majority of games for Newcastle in the Premier League next season, because we've seen that when we don't have Bruno, we don't really win games of football. We've got a poor record without Bruno, and that tells you how good he is. I mean, we all know how good he is. Isak's a little bit different because Wilson's obviously played some games that Isak's not been involved with, but Isak played 75, 80% of last season and got 21 goals. Like, that's how good of a striker he is in the Premier League. If there's no reason why Isak shouldn't be thinking I can get 25 goals this season if I stay fit throughout the whole season, because he's good enough. There's no defense in the league that will go, I'm going to have an easy day today, because he's made all of them, and include likes of Manchester City, like the goal at St James's where he bends it in. Not many strikers can do that against Manchester City. So, yeah, Isak and Bruno, if they stay fit, Newcastle United, they've got a hell of a chance. And I'd almost throw Nick Pope into that, because we don't know how good Vlachodimos is. John Ruddy got relegated with Birmingham last season. Mark Gillespie, love him, but how good is he? We don't know. Dubravka's probably going to leave, so I'd almost throw Pope into that camp. Hopefully he doesn't get a big injury, because that's when you're thinking, well, let's see how good Vlachodimos is.
Joe Linton too. I think he's going to be absolutely crucial in the new season. But it's all about Alexander Isak, isn't it? You watched him against Girona and he was absolutely frightening. He's had a good pre-season and I can't wait to see him back in the Premier League in competitive action. He's the man that we have to watch out for.
100%. He is. Yeah, Alexander Isak, I think, would probably command the biggest fee if you were to sell him because he's that important to Newcastle, the amount of goals more than anything. So, yeah, he's that important. And you're right, Andrew. Against Girona, he was fantastic. He was absolutely brilliant. He could have had a hat-trick himself against Girona. He had the penalty, but he won the penalty by just putting the ball back and just putting the Girona defence into a knot. And he was absolutely outstanding. He'll fancy getting goals on Saturday against Southampton. You've got Alex McCarthy, with the greatest of respect, probably going to start on goal. And I think he's the wrong end of 30. Newcastle should be winning this game comfortably. And don't be surprised if Alexander Isak gets at least 2 goals on Saturday because he is that good.
Yeah, he's in my fantasy team and he is my captain because I think he's going to have an absolute brilliant season. But let's not even mention selling Alexander Isak, Johnny. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that. And even though you're saying a big fee and you're not saying it's going to happen or whatever, let's not attempt fate. What is a massive, massive plus, and although the window has been underwhelming, the very fact that they've kept Bruno, Isak, Gordon, they're keeping those 3 because every one of them has had suitors and had interest and understandably had interest. But I know there's 2 weeks of the window to go, but we can confidently say that at least 2, if not all 3 of them are staying at Newcastle United until at least January, if not the whole entire season. I think it's a massive plus, and in many ways, keeping all 3 of them, especially Alexander Isak, is probably the best bit of business they could have done.
Yeah, it's almost reminiscent of the Alan Pardew, when we didn't sell Ben Arthur, we didn't sell Cisse, we didn't sell Barr, we didn't sell Kabay, we kept all those players, but we didn't bring anybody in. Almost reminiscent of that, if you like. We need to keep our best players to give ourselves any sort of chance, and Isak and Bruno and Botman, when he's back fit, you can probably throw him into that equation as well. Gordon as well, you've mentioned, but I don't see any of them going now. I think we've spoken to people on our podcast, and we've been told certain things that there was a good chance that Bruno may have been sold, or there was a good chance they expected Bruno to leave Newcastle as late as late March, early April. They kind of almost were resigned to the fact that Bruno potentially could be leaving Newcastle, and that changed obviously by the end of the season. Isak and Gordon, I think it was only really when you couldn't really sell Elliot Anderson, you kind of had to almost consider selling one of them to appease the Premier League's PSR rules, which is a load of rubbish. So yeah, I think we've done very well to keep those players, and I'm confident we will. But we need a couple more signings. We just need that couple more signings, and we'll all feel more relaxed, and we'll all even be more looking forward to the season. But the first 3 games: Southampton, Bournemouth, Tottenham, all different tests. But there's no reason why Newcastle United can't get 7 points in those 3 games minimum.
9 points. I'm here for 9 points.
Yeah,
I'm here for 3 wins out of 3. But you are right. A couple more faces, and I think the mood changes, and it would be great to have some sort of progress on the Mark Gay deal before that Southampton game. In terms of, look, there's big questions over Kieran Trippier. Do you think he's going to remain at Newcastle United? And if he does, is he your first choice right back?
It's a good question in the sense that is he first choice right back. I still think he just about is, where he was concrete head and shoulders above everybody. But Tino Livramento had such a good season last season. He's getting very, very close. I still think Trippier is just above him ever so slightly. But it's going to be one of those seasons where you'll probably see Livramento playing more games than Trippier. But right now, as we speak, I think Trippier is number 1 right back. And if Eddie Howe thinks he's fit enough to start on Saturday against Southampton, I think he starts. I would be surprised if Trippier was to leave now, only because I think, because we had this discussion, Sam and I, on our podcast the other week. If you were going to sell Trippier, why did you not sell him in January when we had a really good offer on the table from Bayern Munich? And even I was happy to accept that. Like, I was happy to say, that's an unbelievable offer for the age of the player he is, and no one doubting his quality. but it's the right decision to sell him. I would be surprised unless something happens family wise, which I know there's been a lot of speculation. I can't see him leaving. I think it's not that it's too late, but I just think it'd just be, unless Newcastle really forced him to go for PSR rules, I'll be surprised now.
It shows you the level of debate, though, because we've had this discussion in our office and it's split. You know, I'm in the Tina Livramento camp. Kieran Kelly went for Kieran Trippier. You know, there's a lot of debate about this, and let us know in the comments who you would start against Southampton at right back on Saturday, Tina Livramento or Kieran Trippier. And yes, I would have also sold in January. I think it was a good bid, and Newcastle should have cashed in, although Eddie Howe, of course, didn't want to lose one of his main leaders of the squad, and you know, that's why he's paid the big money to make those decisions. And what else are you looking forward to? I mean, I think even though we maybe come across a little bit pessimistic in stages of this episode, I still think there's a lot to look forward to. We've mentioned that the squad as it is still good enough to really mount a challenge for the top six. And I think individually, like Harvey Barnes, in my opinion, I'm looking forward to seeing him have a good go at next season because it was so disrupted last season. Sandro Tonali, looking forward to seeing him return. Joe Linton, as I've mentioned, back in the middle. I'm looking forward to seeing Lloyd Kelly overcome whatever injuries, worries he's got and have a good run in the side as well. Anthony Gordon as well. Can he continue that great form from last season? I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, you're quite right, Andy. There is a lot of unbelievable players at Newcastle United right now. We're very, very fortunate to see so many good players, and there's still 3 or 4 players that aren't even available for Saturday. It's unlikely that Callum Wilson's probably going to be available, but you've got Sandro Tonali coming back in a couple of weeks, and I think he'll be almost raring to go. It's all, dare I say, it's almost like a new signing, and you know we've got to enjoy it, I suppose. But I am looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, some ultra attacking football, because that's what Eddie Howe's been delivering to Newcastle for so long. I think the cup competitions are key. That's what I'm really looking forward to. As we record, you know, the second round draw will take place. By the time you listen to this, we know who we have tomorrow in the second round. So that will be interesting. Hopefully, it's a home draw, and if anything, it'll just benefit Newcastle in the sense of just getting some not necessarily fringe players, but players that could just do with 90 minutes or 75 minutes, just to give them those minutes, and hopefully it's against a team maybe in League One or League Two that we can, you know, still have a team strong enough to not even worry about it. So cup competitions are really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to see how that goes, especially the fact that Champions League teams are going to be playing 8 games, Europa League teams are going to be playing similar amounts, in Conference League, well, Chelsea, they're going to be playing similar games as well. Are they really going to put all their eggs into the Carabao Cup basket? Are they going to put all their eggs in the FA Cup basket? Maybe not. Let's see how Newcastle United do.
Well, come on, I want your predictions then. Give me your cup predictions. Are they going to win one? They're going to win both? Are they going to get the final of one or the other? Are they going to get knocked out in an early round? What are you predicting?
Newcastle will be at Wembley this season. They will be at Wembley this season. My dream would be the FA Cup. I think there's a chance. I think it's more realistic. It's probably the Carabao Cup, if I'm being honest. But you've got to get to the final to get to the Carabao Cup. You can get to the semi-final and still go to Wembley for the FA Cup, of course. So I would love it to be the FA Cup. I think Newcastle can win the FA Cup. I'll be honest. My heart isn't probably more important than my head when I couldn't make this decision. So I'll say Newcastle win the FA Cup and Carabao Cup, draw depending. Should get minimum quarterfinals, minimum.
I guess it doesn't really matter which cup it is at the end of the day, does it? As long as the first one's lifted, that's all that matters. Just talk to us just briefly about Sandro Tonali's return, because we saw glimpses of why Newcastle United paid so much money for him last season before he was suspended. How long do you think it will be until we see the real Sandro Tonali in terms of that fitness? Because you know he's been training since his ban, but you can't really make up that competitive element that he's not been able to benefit from.
Yeah, don't expect Sandro Tonali to start against Spurs unless there's an injury crisis. Let's be honest. We fully expect Sean Longstaff, Joe Linton, and Bruno Guimaraes to start the season. And I'd argue as long as they stay fit, they pretty much start the first 2 months. Let's be honest. I think they all deserve to start. I know there's obviously a Sean Longstaff debate. I know Sam's a massive advocate of Sean Longstaff. I know other people aren't. I'm more towards the Sam Mulliner Sean Longstaff camp than I am the other side. I think he offers you too much not to have him in the starting 11. He scores some big goals as well. People forget that, but you get the best out of Bruno Guimaraes when you've got Sean Longstaff in the squad, and that you look at his performances. He needs a Sean Longstaff next to him in terms of covering the extra yards. For Tonali, very pleasing on the eye. He's very, very technically good. For me, the Premier League is such an electric pace. It's just trying to work that out. I think the first 10 games of the season where he was involved before the ban, he was almost, we've seen elements of a lot of good things, a couple of things that he needs to work on, but he'll be chomping at the bit. He was the man of the match against Aston Villa the first game of the season. He was probably the man of the match against Liverpool until he got substituted, which I didn't really get at the time. I think if Sandro Tonali plays 90 minutes, Newcastle don't lose that game. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how he does. But I don't think he starts properly maybe end of September at the very earliest, because it is going to be, you can't expect him just to go straight in from the off. I think it's going to be 20 minutes here or there, maybe half an hour, and then maybe a cup game. If it's against a good opposition, maybe he starts that and then builds his fitness up that way.
No, I totally agree with you. I think it's going to be a case of bedding him in, because he's not going to be able to get to the level which he would do if he'd played all of last season. But just exciting to have him back. It really, really is. In terms of the first game on Saturday, just being back at St James's Park, hopefully in the sunshine, good old 3 o'clock kickoff. You looking forward to that one?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I'm a big fan of the 3 o'clock kickoffs at St James's. It's something you can always make a day of it, can't you? Go to whichever pub you go to, or the Stack nowadays. You can go to the Stack now, can't you? And just meet up with your friends, and really, especially first game of the season, the weather looks like it's going to be nice for it as well. So yeah, very much looking forward to it. Hope it's a bit like the Nottingham Forest game a couple of years ago, where we won by a couple of goals. It was a good day, and everybody was optimistic and confident for the season ahead. So that's what I wanted to be by 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Newcastle have to win this game. I don't think that's being disrespectful to Southampton, but we have to win this game. I think it's crucial if we can get a good start, because I think if Southampton were to stay in the game and have a bit of inner belief and then take a chance, and if they go 1-0 up, you're thinking, oh, this might be a bit nervy, a bit edgy, but I think Newcastle will have too much of Southampton. I think Newcastle win by 3-1 on Saturday. But don't be surprised if Joe Linton comes out being man of the match.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. The home form is going to be so key. Again, we need to see, though, that away form that held them back last season. It needs to improve, doesn't it? We can't go another run of games with like one win in however many months it was on the road. It's just not going to be good enough.
No, the away form needs to improve. If you look at the first few away fixtures, are not easy. Like I remember back in the day when I was growing up, you could almost pick certain teams and go, actually, this is a really good opportunity to get 3 points. But on paper, the easiest game away from home was Southampton away. We haven't got the best record of Southampton in Premier League history. So that just tells you how difficult it's going to be. Bournemouth, Wolves, Fulham, tricky opponents, but Newcastle could get 9 points if they play the cards right in terms of those first 3 away fixtures. But if they play at the best, they beat all 3 of those teams away from home. But they need to get that first win early doors. I think Bournemouth's going to be tough, but they're capable of winning.
Yeah, hopefully get that first away win and the momentum starts, and you can go into the games after that on the road full of confidence. Just briefly, it's a big season for the women's side as well. They've made some big signings after back-to-back promotions. I know you go to the games and you cover a lot of you offer a lot of coverage with Newcastle Fans TV. I mean, just how exciting of a campaign is on the horizon?
Yeah, it's a huge season for Becky Langley's side. Again, as you mentioned, back-to-back promotions. They're in the Championship now, which is a real test. Same division as Sunderland and Durham. So there's going to be a couple of derbies. One that they're both going to be playing at St James's and the Stadium of Light, respectively. So it's going to be really interesting. Newcastle are going for promotion. Becky Langley said after the game against Milan on Saturday, they are unapologetically ambitious, and I love that. I think that's a really good phrase. They've both brought in Demi Stokes, who, of course, did exceptionally well at Manchester City. Alicia Body, who I think is Newcastle United's best player, an absolute sensation in the middle of the park, scored a fantastic goal on Saturday as well. So look, Newcastle will be going for promotion. Only one team gets promoted, 11 teams in the league. It's going to be tough, but they're still wanting to bring in a couple more players. So be very, very interesting to see what happens. But they'll be there. They'll be there or thereabouts. I think there's 3 or 4 teams really going to be battling for promotion. So we'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed. I mean, Becky's certainly getting the tools to give it a good go with the signings they've made so far this summer, and hopefully a couple more additions to come as well. We'll finish this episode then with some quick fire questions, Jonny. First off, the most improved player. Who are you tipping to be the most improved player next season?
I'm going to go for Lewis Hall. I think
Lewis Hall.
Not necessarily needs a big season, but I think we saw glimpses towards the back end of the season of a big improvement. So I'm going to say Lewis Hall will give us the biggest improvement from end of last season to hopefully the end of this season. Big season for him, but I think he'll flourish.
Who's going to be the surprise package?
I think the surprise package will be. I'm going to go Sanusi. I think he gets more. I think he gets more games than people will make out. I think he'll get a few more games, and I think he may surprise people. I'm going to go Sanusi. I think he's a bit like Alan St. Maximum, but he just needs to, I think, get a few Eddie Howe training sessions under his belt, get him polished in certain areas. But the difference is he releases the ball at the right times. He just needs to work on that final element of the process of going forward and beating a man and bringing it back and making that, again, decision making. But I think that will come in time. But he's still young and raw.
Yeah, he looks a very exciting prospect. Who's going to be your player of the season? I know that sounds a daft question. The season hasn't even kicked off, but we're here for the big predictions, Jonny. So who's going to be your player of the season?
Bruno Guimaraes. He's the best player I've ever seen in a black and white shirt. And that's why he will be player of the season, because he's so consistent, he's world class, and he delivers on the biggest games. So yeah, Bruno Guimaraes for me.
Your league prediction: where in Newcastle United going to finish? Fourth. There we have it. Go on then, make up the rest of the top 4 for me. Who's going to be champion?
Manchester City, Chargers depending. so see what happens. But yeah, Manchester City they've got the best manager in the world. They've got the best team on the planet. Yeah, no one's stopping Man City. Liverpool's second for me. I know that might surprise people. I just think with Liverpool, everyone kind of doesn't back them, but they've got a tremendous record at Anfield. They bring in 1 or 2 players. I think they'll be there or thereabouts. I don't think they'll be in a title race, but I think they'll be the best of the rest. Arsenal 3rd, Newcastle 4th. I think Man U 5th and Villa 6th. I think people are saying Villa are going to drop off, but Villa have still got a very good team. They've got a very, very good manager. So I think that's my top 6 anyway.
Getting to 4th would be an amazing achievement. And we know we've set it up and said with no midweek games, it's very doable. Everyone stays fit. And that's all true. But I mean, there's 8 teams, going for that top 4. We know you got Spurs that we haven't spoken about, Chelsea potentially, West Ham look like they've done a good bit of business. There's a lot of teams fighting for European football. So it's going to be a really tough season, a good test for Eddie Howe. Who's going to go down?
Southampton will definitely go down. Brentford, if they lose Tonali. Brentford if they lose Tonali and Mbeumo, because where are they getting the goals from? So I'll go Southampton, Brentford, and I will go Leicester just. I think it should stay up. I think they've got a good manager, good brand of football, not being anybody on. I worry if they've got enough goals in them, Ipswich, but I think they might just have enough.
There we go. Well, we're waiting to see if your predictions ring true. Thank you for providing the fans' view, the season preview ahead of Newcastle United's opening game in the Premier League against Southampton. I'll let you, Jonny, just tell our listeners and viewers where they can find your podcast.
Yes, Sam will be killing me otherwise if I don't. Yeah, it's the Greenwood and Mullins Show on Newcastle Fans TV. It's available on all podcast outlets as well. We're obviously on. If you want to watch it on YouTube, we put it out on YouTube as well. So yeah, we've got a guest every single week. Andy's been on. You've been on a few times, haven't you? So over the years. So yeah, we'll have to get you back on sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Newcastle United. But yeah, Sam and I will try and discuss with guests how well it's going to be rather than how bad it's going to be, if you like.
And fingers crossed, it's all good times from here on in. And don't worry, if you missed Sam, we are back with Sam with our Just Take Three series, but it's coming out on Sunday. So the day after Newcastle United have thumped Southampton, you can sit back with a nice brew as you're nursing a hangover potentially and listen to the latest episode of Just Take Three. With me and Sam are stuck on a desert island. That's a lovely image for you guys to picture right now. But thank you to Jonny for popping on to the podcast. I'm sure we'll get Jonny back on later in the season. To you guys watching and listening, you know what to do. If you're on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe as well. And if you're on the audio channel, do leave us a rating and review. And please share the podcast among your Newcastle supporting friends and family. And for myself, I'll see you guys tomorrow.